Hi, I am making this video for mostly my girls in House of Peace, out from Harvest School 15 in Pemba, Mozambique, Africa. Um, a lot of the girls there were kind of excited that I'm engaged to Matthew Monk, and they wanted to know the story. And it was kind of funny because a lot of people get to tell like a engagement story. Like he went up to a mountain and there was this beautiful ring and there was a sunset. And that's actually not even close to how it happened for us. But um, I wanted to actually share this with everyone because today and over the past couple of weeks, when I share the story of what happened, there are actually people who become really encouraged because they start to realize that maybe something this amazing can happen to them too, and I believe it can. So I will try to make it through this as quick as possible, and yeah, I hope you're encouraged. So I met Matthew actually right before I left for Harvest School. I left for Harvest School in September of 2011. It was a very quick decision, and it was very much a God decision, and he provided everything, and I was able to go, and it was amazing. And I went with this like intention of like going out and like going to some like crazy impoverished nation and just making a change and making everything better. And I found while I was there that I was going to come back to Texas, and I was quite upset. I did try to go against everything that God told me and go to um, go back to Africa or go to Mexico or like maybe go to Bulgaria or somewhere cooler than Texas. But I started to find I really do love Texas. And then God came crashing down whenever Amy Lancaster came and spoke and talked about inner city missions. And I was like, you know what? I'll go back to Texas. Like, I see what's going on there. I went and visited her whenever I came back. And it was just amazing. It was amazing. And I had a lot of hope for what could happen here. And not just Austin, but the whole state of Texas. And then, we'll move on from there. Anyways, I came back in December of 2011, towards the end, right before Christmas. I had been in the bush for 10 days, and I had to leave a 10-year-old little sweet boy named Mustafa, and all that was really hard. And so it was a very big heart thing for me whenever I came back. And on top of that, I was talking with God one night, and I was like, I haven't really done really well at this dating thing, and I know I really want to get married, but I don't know what I can do about that. And God simply told me, try not dating. Try not dating for 3 months. Don't spend any alone time, any time where you're alone with a guy. Don't give any one on one attention to any guys. And I thought, well, I have some friends and I can still hang out with them. And then I started to actually realize what that was doing. And later found out that even with just being friends with some guys and spending that one on one time with them, I had sewed things into it that maybe I wasn't aware of. And so I went to hanging out in groups. And there were times whenever I would talk on the phone or on Skype with a friend, and I would be like, I really just don't think I should be doing this. And it was very strange because I've never been told, like, it's not good for boys and girls to spend time together. And I'm not saying that you can't, but I myself have been through a lot, and so it just worked for me to just completely be purged of sewing anything into a relationship or having crushes. Or if I started to like someone, I knew it wasn't from God because I knew that that wasn't the time. So in that time, I did see Matthew once, and we were on 6th Street, and I was going through a lot of intense just feelings about how I used to be a party girl and Sixth Street used to be somewhere, wow, that I found my worth by going out and partying and having friends down there. And I love a lot of my friends. I still have a lot of my friends that party down there and I love them. And I know I still have fun. I would still have fun to go with them. It was just a place that I had completely left and never wanted to go back to. And I went back down there and he was there. And it was a really intense experience for me. And it took me talking to another friend who had a similar experience. Um, he encouraged me that, I could at least go and try it and I never have to go back if I don't want to. Which actually wasn't the case. It actually, I realized how much authority I have over territories such as that, and that just being there kind of helped things out. Anyways, I can tell you more about that later. But I went down there and I'm walking and I'm going through all this intense stuff. And at the time, Matthew says he thought that I had a stick up my butt. He thought I was kind of, um, I guess unapproachable. I don't really know. He could tell you better. Maybe one day you'll get to hear his side of the story. But at one point, we were walking and he came up to me and I guess he had kind of thought about what he was going to say to me, and he said, "Have you ever thought about growing a beard?" And actually, I have. I do make a lot of jokes about it, and as most of you know, he has quite the beard. And he says this to me, and I think, actually, I have, and just kind of tell him, I always say things like, if I could just grow a beard, I would have more money in my bank account and find the perfect job. And I make that excuse all the time. It's just because I can't grow a beard. And so maybe that was why I couldn't find a husband. So I was just walking with him, didn't think anything of it, went about my business, didn't see him again. And then I made it to April, which was when I could start dating again. And I honestly would tell people, like, I'm going to meet my husband in April because I can date again in April. And April was the big month. And for the first almost 2 weeks of April, I was almost heartbroken because I had made myself believe that it was just going to happen. Like April 1st, he was going to be standing right there. And um, he wasn't. And so I went through this intense experience and have just like trying to run away. I started to plan this trip through Eastern Europe, and I was going to go to Turkey and Bulgaria, Albania, maybe like make my way over to other parts of Europe and possibly never come back. And that really put a lot of stress on me because I knew that it was stepping out of obedience to God. I had been obedient for so long. I felt like I had made it to that point. I mean, 3 months. It's very long. And made it to that point and I was done. I was done being obedient and he was just going to have to like the plans that I had. And one night it all came crashing down. I sat at my church, Cathedral of Praise, and I cried and cried and cried and cried and cried. And I was just really just like, God, when is it my turn? Like that sort of thing. And he showed me this picture of this little girl that I knew, one of the little girls in my class. And I had tried to give her a different option. She couldn't have the option that she wanted. And therefore, she threw a fit. And, and so he shows me this picture of her and he shows how I handled it and how I gave her other options, but she still threw a fit. And in the end, she ended up missing all of the fun that she could have had and now has because she often chooses that other option of going to the art center rather than the home center. And, anyways, he showed me that and he said, "You keep trying to go to this place and have this life when I already have a life that you're not even trying out and you're not even having fun." And I wasn't going to go to this party that night at the Leaning Tower of Bliss, but some friends of mine talked me into it. Thanks, Gail and Harry. Um, and I went, and there was Matthew. And I don't know that it was really love at first sight or anything like that, but I sat down and talked to him, and when I sat down and talked to him, I all I remember about the whole night is just laughing and just being in a place of joy that I didn't really remember existed. I mean, I laugh a lot. I laugh with my roommates, I laugh with my best friend, I laugh with all of these other people. But it was like it was just very natural. It was very easy, and we had planned to do something the next day. I had told him I was doing this pancake breakfast thing, and at this time I totally didn't even think of him as an option for dating. And I already had a crush on someone else. I don't think he knows that, but I did, and so I really just didn't think about it. And so the next day, whenever I got a stomach bug and didn't show up, I didn't call him, and he called me, and it was really sweet. And he just let me know he was thinking about me, and then I didn't see him for a week. And I didn't really talk to him or anything like that. And then again, the next weekend, I was kind of going through some more stuff, but it was much better at this point, and I felt a lot happier. And a guy named Andre Raba was in town, and I was possibly going to see him, still up in the air. Gail and Harry once again told me I should come. So, love the way that I love them and trust their judgment. I decided to go after having a wonderful morning with a beautiful friend of mine, Melissa Scott. And I went, and there he is again, and he's laying on the floor, and I was just like, well, he's here. And something in me was really excited, but still didn't think anything of it. And he asked me to go to lunch with him and his friends and almost demanded it. And I noticed that he did not do that when another friend of mine said she couldn't go. Still didn't think anything of it. And we went, and he was very silly. And we had a friend who said, we were talking about relationships and how, like, do you really think that this whole, like, how Roland Baker, Heidi Baker knew that she was going to marry Roland Baker and then it happened? Or, I've heard of people hearing, you're going to marry a guy named Fred Smith, and then 6 years later they meet Fred Smith and they fall in love. And it's like, does God really speak to us that way? And we were just kind of having this discussion, and Matthew makes this comment that he is, if he ever heard God tell him that he was going to meet his wife at this specific place at this specific time, he was going to wear an ugly poop brown suit. And I barely heard any of the conversation, but I definitely heard that. And I laughed, and I was like, the nature of God is that if you went in a poop brown suit, he would probably tell her, well, he'll be there and he'll be wearing a poop brown suit. And she'll probably think, like, gross, but she'll know that it's you because God is good all the time and he has a sense of humor. And so we go and we walk through this park after lunch, and it's just a big group of us, and we're walking, and he's doing his thing, and then they do all these pickup lines. And never once am I thinking, I did at one point see that he was saying things like really great about himself, and he would look back like, is she watching? But I really didn't even think anything of it then. I thought he was just being silly. And so um, we're walking back, and a friend of mine is there, and she's saying, Jacqueline is saying, oh my goodness, it is so pretty here. This would be a great place to have some pictures taken. And I was like, if I ever have a boyfriend, we'll come here and take pictures. And she says, in his poop brown suit. And I'm thinking, she doesn't think I like Matthew, does she? She doesn't think I like him. Then I kind of forget about it, and then we go back to the conference, or the speaker speaking, and wasn't really a conference, but the speaker speaking, and it's amazing. And he actually ends up talking about how he met his wife and how he just confidently went to her and told her that he loved her, and it was just really sweet. And how God, like, really, like, waited till the right moment to release him to do it and everything. And I was like, man, I hope that happens. Now, if you don't know the backstory, I had kind of decided that I wasn't going to date again. That I really was hoping that I would um, just meet someone or have a best friend, someone that I could be best friends with. And I knew just one day I would just marry him. Like there would just be no, does he like me? Does he not like me? Does he want to be with me? Because in all honesty, I just really didn't want to take that focus off of Jesus and what he was doing. I was getting really excited about the things that he was doing in Austin, for one. And also, I was just feeling so encouraged and so loved by all the other people around me. I really didn't have time for someone who I was questioning whether they loved me or not. And no one should. You don't have to go through that. You don't have to. So I ended up, my roommate had made a suggestion of him coming with us to go to Mississippi to visit the mission base of Amy and David Lancaster. We Will Go Ministries, who I love so much and just really honor them. And we were going to go, and we were trying to build a team, and my roommate Jessica had mentioned something about them coming, and him and his friend Chris Hammond coming, and I wasn't really sure how I felt about it. And then I spent the day with them, and I saw how he loved people, and decided that it might be a good idea. Now, the day after I hung out with him, I actually was hanging out with Kathleen Golden and Stacy Jinkerson. I'm name dropping a lot because it's very important that these people know how important they are in this whole story. But was having coffee with those girls, and I kind of tell them this story about, my day hanging out with the Andre Robert thing going on, and the guys from Houston being in town, Danny Randall and Chris Hammond, and all of them being in town, and Matthew Monk. And I never think that I'm talking more about this Matthew guy. But I start to tell her about this other guy that I have a crush on, and she says, he's a really nice guy, and I'm sure that he's wonderful, but I'm kind of sold on this Matthew guy. And I said, yeah, but I just wish he would cut his hair. And she was like, I mean, I'll cut it in his sleep. This was Kathleen saying this. And so it really had me thinking that day, like, well, should I like him? I really don't know. And so I asked him to come with us on the trip, and he says, awesome. And so then they're in the group coming to Mississippi, and we planned this Skype date to go and kind of talk about things. And we talk about that for maybe 10 minutes, but we were on Skype for about 3.5 hours, and I realized we just don't have awkward moments, and we just really enjoy each other and like talking to each other. And there were so many things about him that I just thought were hilarious. And he talked to me about him being a teacher, and some of you know I'm a teacher and I teach a different level than him, but it was really fun just getting to talk about that sort of stuff and how we had so many of the same interests. And I got to meet his dog, and he didn't think it was weird that I have a pet dinosaur named Louise, and also a pet alligator who is off hanging out with Mallory, our practice kid, um, practice daughter. Um, anyways, but he didn't think that those things were weird, the things that I think are so funny. And then we just laughed and had fun and tried on hats and talked silly stuff. And my roommate came in and was kind of discouraged, and he talked to her. And then a couple of days later, we decided to talk again, and it was great. And then he moved to Austin, and he came in town, and he was here, and we went down to 6th Street again, and we had a little dance off. And I kept thinking, like, I think he likes me. I'm not really sure, but I think he does. And at one point in the night, which I later asked and confirmed he did, I thought he told me I was cute. Um, and he did, but he wouldn't admit it then. And I just like being around him. I really enjoy being around him. And in all honesty, there was a certain point where I thought, like, he's the best friend that I've always looked for, that I've always wanted. Um, and I was just so happy that I met him. Some of you know that I did pray for my husband at one point, and I specifically said things that I wanted, and I went through this list of things, like someone who's more analytical than me, and someone who likes to read and study, and just all of these things. And the very last thing my friend asked me, do you want him to have anything else? And I said, I hope he has a beard. I want him to have a beard, or at least be able to grow a beard. So here I have this best friend with this beard who's analytical and likes to think about things and ponder, and is very funny and all of these wonderful things. And he I wasn't sure if he liked me. We went through this week of just like randomly hanging out, and then finally I talked to my roommate, and I was like, I feel like I'm just supposed to wait till Jackson, wait till Jackson, wait till I get to Mississippi. So we just had this whole, like, I would be like, I don't know if he likes me, and she'd be like, wait till Jackson, and I would go back and forth, and I wasn't sure if he liked me or he liked someone else or how it was going. And then there was this other girl that I thought liked him, and I was like, oh my God, what if he likes me back? And my roommate would say, wait till Jackson. And my roommates were really sweet through the whole thing, this whole week of me trying to figure out if he likes me or not. You know, it was agony. And we're at my house, and it's 2 days before we leave to Mississippi, and we had hung out, and it was the first time that we hung out just one on one. So Matthew Monk is the only guy that I've actually intentionally hung out with one on one, because God is good. He's the only one that I sowed that intentionally sowed anything into our relationship. And but we walked, and we happened to be over by Guitar Center, and we went in, and he grabbed a banjo and played a banjo, and I love banjos, and I just thought it was the cutest thing ever. And he was just so silly, and I don't know if he was nervous, but I was incredibly nervous. And we went to my house afterwards with my roommate and Jessica and his friend Chris, and we were hanging out, and we are eating pizza, and we're talking, and he makes this comment that he would not make a move on a girl now. He just really didn't want to sow anything into a relationship that he didn't mean, and so he wouldn't make a move on a girl unless he knew he was going to marry her. And then about 3 hours later, after hanging out for a while and swimming and doing all these fun things, he I find he's trying to hold my hand, and I'm thinking, like, what is going on? Does he want to marry me? Like, it's weird to think that because someone's holding your hand, they want to marry you. But maybe that's how it should be. Because your affections are incredibly important, and he really made me realize how important my affections were, because at that moment he didn't say it, and it was really awkward, and there were other people around. And but next day I see him. We don't hold hands because we're around a bunch of friends, but that day I just knew, like, I was going to marry this guy. I knew I was going to marry him. Like, my whole future, I was future tripping, as my friend Lindsay Johnson called it. I was future tripping. I was terrified that there was a chance that he might not like me back, but I had this peace about it. I guess I wasn't terrified, but I really did have peace. And then he says, the next day we go to Jackson, and he shows up, and I fixed his hair in pigtails, and it was really cute, and I put a bow in it because he has that long hair that I wanted him to cut, which I enjoy sometimes fixing. But and then we went through this awkward period for about the first like 3 hours of maybe 4 or 5 hours of the day. And then there was just a certain point where he was just like, we got to Louisiana, and he was just going to hold my hand. And he gave me a flower, and it was just so sweet. Like, it was just the cutest thing. And I was like, I think, I think he's in love with me. And I knew how I felt about him. And so we just went about our day and we were really happy and we weren't figuring anything out or talking about anything. And we went into this intense atmosphere of doing missions, but we were together and it was fun, and we just got to know each other in the mission standpoint and just like the traveling standpoint and all these things. And it was just like I loved him even more because he's just such a leader, and he just really took control of a lot of things that I was nervous about having to delegate out, and maybe it wasn't for anyone else to do. And we get there and our friends start to ask questions. The missionaries there were asking questions. So it came to a point where um I wasn't really sure. And so one day we're walking and I looked at him and I said, I have a seat. I have to tell you something. And he's like, what? And I said, um, I like you. Well, actually, I said, I'm really excited about playing the skating rink tonight. And he said, I have to tell you something. And then he tells me some really embarrassing story about himself. And then I turned to him and I said, I like you. And he said, I love you. And then I was like, what? And we walk into this house and we have lunch with all these people. And I was just crazy and like, what did he just say? Did you just say what I think he said? And so we go into the prayer room and everybody's like, let's pray for the city. And all I can think about is like, I think he said he loved me and I don't really know. So we're sitting in the prayer room and I'm like trying so hard to pray, and I'm like, God, all I keep thinking about is I'm in love with Matthew Monk and I need to tell him. I need to tell him this. And he says, and so I roll over and I say, oh, Matthew, I have to tell you something. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, I feel like I'm going to explode. And he looks at me and he says, I'm going to explode. And I just sat there for a minute and then I said, I am so in love with you. And he says, I'm so in love with you too. And I said, I don't really want to be your girlfriend. I really want to be in love with you. And he said, I want to be in love with you too. So we really didn't know where things were going, but we knew we were in love. So we went through that day just getting to be in love, not really caring where things were going, how they were going to happen, what anyone else was going to think. We just were in love. I've really learned the nature of God in getting to experience this with Him, because sometimes we're so worried about what's going to come next with God that we don't just spend that time realizing that it's a relationship that is very passionate and mutual love. Like, it's just crazy. It was like He made you, so He always knew you were there. And so we knew we were in love. We had people asking us, what does this mean? And there were a lot of questions that came up. And I thought it meant that we were going to get married. But we decided to sit down for the sake of everyone around us and talk about it. And we sat down, and I just remember sitting there, and it all happened so fast. We sat on the porch in Jackson, Mississippi, of a house at We Will Go Ministries. And I think it was Freedom House, maybe. And I said, I don't know how you feel about this. And he said, oh, I want to marry you. And I said, I want to marry you too. And we just sat there, and I said, I get to marry you. He's like, I get to marry you. And we went through all these crazy things that have been going through our heads, and just how it's almost like he was the person I've always wanted to marry. And then suddenly he's in front of me and we get married. And he looks at me and he says, "Girl, I'm going to marry you so hard you're not going to know what happened." And I just think that's so funny. So we decided we wanted the good Reverend Will Bybee to marry us, so he will be. And because so much had happened over the past couple of days, we decided that we would just wait till the next day to decide on a date. So we are getting married in 95 days. And we're not really sure what we'll do after that or how things will work out or how we're going to plan out our lives. But I know that every single day I get to be in love with him. And that is the best thing ever. And every time I see him and I know the way that he looks at me, I just completely forget everything else. Everything else just goes away. And the day that I was just one day I was trying to think about it. I was like, what is it about him? I mean, I know that there are like a million things that I love about him. I love that he loves dinosaurs and kids, and he has beautiful eyes, and he can grow an amazing beard. But the thing that I love about him the most is that I matter to him, and when he looks at me, I know how redeemed I am. I never have to question it with him. I never have to think like, is he gonna see everything I've ever done wrong in my life? He doesn't. He doesn't. He doesn't care. I don't care. I don't care that he has old girlfriends and that he has a past and that he's burned bridges and all of those things. Because none of that matters. And none of it matters in your life either. Every single one of you deserves someone who looks at you and makes you realize just how redeemed you are. And yes, I am making this for my House of Peace girls because this is something that we all got to talk about. I spent so many times talking to Shannon and Jade and Brittany and Joe and Rebecca and Priscilla and Livia and Heidi and Kim and Renee and Heather and Rebecca and Sarah and Nancy and Kristen and Iman and Kelly and oh Mama Kelly and Mama Christine and oh gosh and Jax and even Christina Farmer, who didn't even live there, but she would come over all the time, and April, my God, April helped me deal with so many issues that I had, like jealousy. Jeez. But all in all, I'm sorry if I didn't mention you. I love you. But all in all, the big thing is that I believe that there is someone that is completely made to your liking and you won't care about silly things. You won't. But there are things that you will realize you didn't realize were so important because they are. And I hope that if right now you're in a relationship that you've been wondering where it's going to go, I encourage you to realize how important you are and how special you are. So maybe some other time I can give you some other backstory on anything else I talked about. If there's anything that I missed, please don't hesitate to tell me. Hopefully, Matthew himself will give you an account of what happened on his side because I know some of it, but it's his story. And now we're starting our story. I love you all so very much, and I wish the best for you.